Greetings and salutations, and we're back with yet another hardcore one talent challenge on the paladin. I'm going to attempt to make it as far as I possibly can through Act 5, which I don't know. I don't know if I'll actually be able to. Might actually go back down and kill Shank the Overseer too. Just for, to turn him into a loot pinata. There was a time where, doing Shank Eldritch runs was, prime magic find. Don't know when that was. Which, when they found out how Magic Find actually worked in the game, people started manipulating it. Which, if you don't know how the Magic Find works in this game, is you have what is called treasure class, right? And it's a hidden integer. And that hidden integer says, okay, this monster's worth this treasure class, these monsters are worth that one, so on and so forth, rinse, repeat. Right? Your Magic Find actually doesn't increase your potential to find a magic item by whatever. What it does is it basically tampers with that hidden integer called treasure class. So it does increase your finding of magic items, right? By tampering with the treasure class of the monsters that you encounter. And what they do is effectively you start out with a certain level of treasure class, and for each point or so of magic find over that, it increases the treasure class by a small amount. And when it increases the treasure class, the higher the treasure class of the monsters you get, the higher chances you have of finding a magical item. That's how that works. And that's pretty much what that is. So you can understand effectively, if you know the whole system of what item you're going after, you can effectively equip certain percentage of magic find to give you the amount of not really magic find you're looking for, but the level of treasure class you want. And once that number exceeds the item you're looking for, the higher you have a higher potential of finding that item. For example, one of the hardest items to find in the game is actually an ethereal Tyrael's Might. Reason being is that you have to have, I think they said something along the lines of treasure class 94, which requires you to be on hell difficulty in Act 5, going to Abaddon, in order to get treasure class 90. So you have to be wearing a level of magic find to find Tyrael's Might in Abaddon in hell difficulty. It's just unlikely that you're going to run into a Tyrael's Might. And then on top of that, you have to find an ancient armor that is legendary. And when you find the legendary ancient armor, you then have to have it be ethereal. So it's a percentage on a percentage on a percentage. It's a ridiculously low integer. It's a ridiculously low chance. And some guy spent the better half of, I think, 12 years, and he was streaming. Now, he wasn't streaming all those years, but he spent the better half of 12 years in this game. I have to open my door back here so that I can get a little bit of air, so that because my PC keeps throttling up the fan speed and then throttling it back down. To prevent that from doing that, I just let in the cold air from out in the hallway. Cools it down just enough in here that it doesn't have to throttle up anymore. Keeps the fan speed low, puts less wear and tear on the pieces. Perfect. But no, he spent the better portion of 12 to 15 years looking for an ethereal Tyrael's Might. He finally got one. Actually on stream, too. And it ended up being nearly perfect. Now, people would say, well, what do you mean nearly perfect? I mean, he found exactly what he was looking for. Well, there was a thing in Diablo 2, and it still exists in Diablo 3, and I'm pretty sure it exists in Diablo 4. Most people don't really, I don't think, chase it as much in those games as they did in Diablo 2, because the stats mattered more here than in Diablo 3 or Diablo 4, respectively. I mean, it's just bog standard right now. And the stats that mattered more here is because, like, the small percentage that you would get as a bonus was actually better than you could. It made more of an impact. It was more impactful of a stat, right? And so that was basically key. And in Diablo 3 and Diablo 4, because the stats have a range, right? Like, for example, I go here and it says, the 1 to 3 fire damage. That was innate on the weapon, okay? So that 1 to 3 fire damage could have potentially been up to, like, 10. It could have been, like, 4 to 10 fire damage, so to speak, if it was perfect. Then again, that's not a unique, so that's a bad description. And then the 91% enhanced defense. Could have been 100. So there's a range. And you wouldn't think that that matters, but in this game it does. Because if you take a look at your defense, when you're walking, it doesn't work. You have the chance will hit you less than 5%, or is 5%, and then the chance to block is 32. Those stats matter, because if their chance to hit you is high enough, your life just evaporates. Completely evaporates. So, you want to minimize their hitting you. You want to maximize you hitting them. Obviously, bog standard RPG, right? But it's more than that, because in this game, it can be extra punishing if you're off on your stats by ever so little. And the reason why it gets punishing here is because if your stats are off by a little bit, the mobs can just absolutely just destroy you. Ruthlessly destroy you. And so stats were at a premium in this game. Now, switching gears, still talking about games, mind you. Switching gears, I've started playing Guild Wars 2. Now, somebody mentioned that I should try it, which is fine. I'm willing to try games. I'm willing to go out and try games, especially if they're free, because my theory is this. Every game, and this is something that was lost to the annals of history, and it shouldn't be, and they should bring it back, honestly. They need to bring back, not demos, but more so, try before you buy. Play a free-to-play iteration of it for X amount of time, and make it so that you can't obviously capitalize off of it. And then from there, you can tinker with it and see what happens, right? Now, they need to bring that back. They used to have, I would say demos, but I hate to call it demos. I really do. They had iterations of it where you could play the game for free to get a feel of it, and if you enjoyed it, you could then make a one-time purchase and the game is yours. Right? Now, they could do the same thing with microtransactions, right? And I know that a lot of people don't like microtransactions, but if you make the microtransactions so that it's purely cosmetic and there's no actual, nothing to be gained power-wise from it, then I can understand people playing it, right? And I can understand it becoming a successful thing. But they need to bring back games that are, free to try, free to play, and then purchase it if you like it, or just make two things, right? And this is something that I wish the gaming community would strongly consider. If you're a game developer out there, make it so that you have a single player experience for those that want the single player experience. And the single player experience is free. But if you want multiplayer and you want the ability to play with your friends, you have to purchase a copy. Now, people, of course, would say this is a bad idea because then everybody will just download the single player and they'll have free servers. Okay, but counterpoint, what's stopping them from doing that now? Nothing. Absolutely nothing is stopping them from doing the exact same thing right now. Nothing at all, because there's the internet piracy is rife. You can go out there and find a game and be like, yep, this is the game I'm playing, and then I'm going to play it with my friends on a private server because why not? And people could do that, and a lot of people do that, and nothing stops them. Now, I know that companies are like, well, we need to put a thing in here to stop them. We need to really kind of have a makeshift injunction, so to speak. Hey, there's Abaddon. And they need to, you have these companies that are like, well, we need to stop them from doing what they're doing. Okay, easiest way to stop them from doing what they're doing is play into it. Quite literally. That's not a joke. The people are going to pirate it anyway. The people are going to do exactly what they're already doing. Lean into it. Don't lean away from it. Make the game free. Make the game free to get, and if they want to play with multiplayer, make it a small-time purchase. Make it like a $15, $20 purchase. And you could toss microtransactions in it afterward for an additional, like cosmetics and whatnot, and money making. No big deal, right? And it would sell like hotcakes. Why would it sell like hotcakes? Because there's tons of games out there that are good games, but people are so afraid of getting burned by, oh, well, we bought into this game, and what do you know? We got shafted on it. Everybody's so afraid of getting burned by it. And it's like, okay. Whoa, lag? Lots of lag. Almost died. That was dangerous. What I'm saying is, like, you have these people that are afraid to buy a game because they're afraid to get burned. And because there's been plenty of games out there that pump and dump, right? There've been plenty of companies out there that they make a game, and they, milk people for whatever it's worth, and then they dump it. Of course, this is where you're going to get people saying ashes of creation. Wrong. I don't fervently believe. I don't believe in my heart of hearts that was their intention. I really don't. Because look at how long they went through development. They were in development, 10 years? 12 years? And you're somehow telling me that they made money off this and then just ditched after they made a whopping amount of money? They didn't. As some guy said the other day, he knows a lot about what's going on with it. And he even said that a lot of the people that Steam is not dispersing money to Ashes of Creation, and that they're actively considering refunds, I guess. And this was just what I heard, mind you. So pretty much everything else that was paid for up to that point, like 10, 15 years of development, you're talking, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money to be putting into a potential game and then to have it go belly up. That's not a pump and dump. New World, when it first came out, was a pump and dump. New World, when it came out, was like, hey, here's this game, Amazon's making it. Everybody got on board, everybody was loving it in the beginning, and then all of a sudden Amazon's like, well, we're no longer supporting it. And then they slowly started limping in people later and saying, okay, well, maybe we are supporting it a little bit, but, you know, not too heavily, don't look too much into it, that kind of thing. And they were kind of wishy-washy about the whole thing. I understand, you know, as a developer, you want to take time off because you just got done developing a game, but you kind of have to, like, make sure things are working right before you decide to, you know, take a step back and take a back seat in a victory lap, right? You know, if you're developing a game and you're really working on developing it and focusing on it a lot, you can't make a, you know, it's kind of like NASCAR. You can't start making a victory lap with 4 laps to go. Okay? You have to see it through to the end and make sure you cross that finish line and make sure everybody's there and everything's right and that the, you know, everything is done proper. Then you can take that victory lap. But anymore today, people are just like, oh, well, we're going to take that victory lap right now because we need to take that victory lap right now. And what they're hoping for is they're hoping that people buy into something and then they can take a small break and then come back and patch this problems out later. Problem with doing that is when you take that break and you are in this downtime and all these problems arise, those problems need to be fixed, otherwise that makes people disgruntled. And why it makes them disgruntled is you had all this time to find these bugs but couldn't, right? And this is where there's a big disconnect between consumer and producer. And I will say this. Massive problem, massive discrepancy between producer consumer, okay? Consumers think they have, you know, let's say you're taking 8 years to make a game. I'll get back to the Guild Wars thing here in a minute. Let's say you're taking 8 years to make a game, right? And in those 8 years, you've squashed all these bugs, you've got all this stuff figured out. You launch the game, you decide we're going to take 3-4 months off, take a vacation, because we're no longer behind the cubicles, we're going to, you know, crack open a keg full of beer, you know, beer or whatever on the beach, take some time off, put our feet up, visit our family, that kind of thing. And then all of a sudden, players are like, well, there's these bugs, get out there and fix it. Okay, here's the thing. Company of 100 people. There's a bug that exists. These 100 people play the game and bug test. But because they don't bug, because they're not playing every single minute facet of the game that a lot of people tend to do, because there are min-maxers that will, you know, we call them sweats. A lot of sweaty players out there that will try to min-max everything. And as they're doing that, what happens? They find a bug. Why? Because they're min-maxing. And when they're min-maxing, they're like, oh, well, this doesn't work properly when paired with this. Why doesn't it? Well, quite simply, the developers never did that. Why? They didn't think anybody was going to. They didn't devote the time and effort into doing something that a niche amount of players would do. So why does that bug go undetected? Well, you have 100 people. You have programmers, developers, you have artists, musicians, voice actors, script writers, a vast plethora of people on a development crew. Very few play testers. In fact, some of the people do double duty as a play tester in some cases. Now, what happens? Well, your sample size is this big. And of that sample size, maybe one person plays that niche. And because that one person plays that niche and they don't have enough time to play that niche to its entirety, it often goes undetected. This doesn't mean that the developer didn't care, it just means that there wasn't enough resources to put out there. There wasn't enough resources to devote to testing every minute niche. So what happens when you expand your sample size? Well, when you expand your sample size, what you will inevitably find is you will find more issues. More things will come to light. More bugs will arise. Not because the game's buggier when you launched it versus when you were on, say, the PTR or versus when you were developing it, but because your sample size increased. Players don't understand this. They think, well, the game should have been the exact same from when I played it on, say, the PTR. Well, newsflash, buddy, it is. Perfect example, World of Warcraft. I know people hate it when I make that reference, but World of Warcraft was notorious for it. They would put a thing out on the PTR, and there would be a glaring bug. So Blizzard would fix the glaring bug. And when you fix a glaring bug, or any bug for that matter, fixing this bug may cause 3 others to show up. That's just how it works. Squash 1, get 4. Right? It's just the name of the game. Sad as it is, that's the name of the game. Sucks to be you. Oh well. You know? And that's what happens. However, there's the other thing. Where these people are not having a large enough sample size of players on the PTR testing certain things, that this bug went unnoticed, and it went unnoticed because the sample size was too small. Because not everybody plays the PTR. Why would they? I'm just going to redo the progression anyway. That's a waste. So with a reduced sample size, you have a reduced detection of bugs. To give an analogy that would make sense, let's say you have 3 acres of farmland. Okay? On that 3 acres of farmland, I tell you that there's mines in 1 acre of that farmland. But you're only allowed to search it 1/8 of an acre at a time. By hand, no metal detectors. What's your chances of finding that mine? Slim. Why? Because you don't have a big enough sample size. You're getting 1/8 of an acre, which means you have to do it 24 times in order to find the one problem. Same way with bug development, or it's the same way with bug fixings. It's the same way with all bugs in every game. It's such a wide expanse of space that they have to check that it causes problems. That doesn't mean they're lazy as a developer. It just means they don't have the time to devote for it. Again, back to the field analogy. There's a wide open field. Now I tell you, wait, I'm going to allow you to check 3/4 of an acre at a time instead of 1/8 of an acre. Now you're going to find that mine a lot quicker. Then I'm going to go one further and say, okay, you're allowed to use ground penetrating radar from an overhead drone. You're going to find that landmine right away. Same thing with bug fixing. Increase the sample size, increase the proficiency in finding bugs by testing everything. Right there's your overhead drone. Right there's all the stuff that I just mentioned with the farmer's field. Just applied differently in an analogy. And yet you'll find the bug in a heartbeat. Why? Because you have a larger sample size, and you have more focus on a broader range of things because of the larger sample size. And that's how it is. That doesn't mean that every company's that way. There are some that don't do that. There are some that just, they struggle to find bugs because they're never going to get that sample size. And so a lot of things go undetected. There are some companies that pump and dump and they're lazy. And they refuse to address bugs. Which is kind of where Blizzard's kind of gotten lately. Like, they were told of glaring bugs in certain aspects of the game. And when they were told of those glaring bugs in a game, they turned a blind eye to it and waited. And in that turning a blind eye to it, they basically said to the players, well, we don't care about that bug. It's not breaking the game that much. Or if something is exploitative in a game, Blizzard likes to turn a blind eye to the exploitative nature of things. Unless the exploit really hurts a very specific group of people, and I've noticed this to be very true of Blizzard. Then it's fixed almost immediately, right? For example, I'm going to give a couple of examples here. The Reckoning bug for Paladins. World of Warcraft, there was a Reckoning bug for Paladins. I know, shock, considering I just said that. What it was whenever a Paladin took a critical hit, it would get one charge of Reckoning. You couldn't see where the charges are stored. There was no timer. There was no duration. It just stored a charge of Reckoning until their next attack. Their next attack, however, would dump all Reckoning charges that were stored on the target. Up until your pretty much weapon exploded. Like, you would just swing with everything until your durability was gone on your weapon. Which caused some problems, rightfully so. I mean, think about it, you're basically wasting, 70, 80 durability getting, anywhere from 130 to 200 swings on a weapon to make that durability go away. What was happening was they would get rogues to duel a paladin. And the paladin would just stand there, and the rogues would just backstab and get crits back to back to back, and they would store up a ton of charges of Reckoning. Then they sent a paladin in with 4 separate gray one-handers that he didn't care about breaking. He went in and he aggroed Doomlord Kazak, which was a world boss. And he swung his first attack, wasted the entire weapon, put a new one on, swung again, blew up that entire weapon, and he was taking a quarter of this world boss's health down with one hit. 4 weapons later, with his bubble on, he soloed the world boss by using that exploit. It was fixed in 24 hours. Now, anything that benefits somebody like that gets fixed almost immediately. Something also worth noting, anything that benefits warriors in World of Warcraft generally gets kicked in the teeth immediately. That's because one of the lead devs back in the day played a Frost Mage, and you could tell he just did not like warriors at all. And that would be Ghostcrawler. He was a warrior community manager. I spent probably 2.5 solid weeks trolling him on the forums. I got forum banned one time for it too. I could elaborate that story as well. Anyway, I got forum banned for talking about Ghostcrawler, and he eventually stopped going to the warrior forums and reading them and posting on them because he was the community manager for the warriors. He said, he was trying to get the warriors into a good position in the game. And it's like, how could you possibly get the warriors in a good position in the game if you're playing a Frost Mage? Now, for those that don't know, Frost Mages were the antithesis of warriors. Like, if you played a warrior and a Frost Mage attacked you, you just died on the spot. You lost. There's very little chance that you would actually win versus a Frost Mage as a warrior. Just didn't happen. So, with him saying, I'm the community manager for the Warriors, and he's playing a Frost Mage, it's like, so that's why we're never getting any buffs. Why would you buff that which you can make easy pickings out of, right? Effectively, what I had said on the forums, and I remember it, there used to be a previous community manager, went by the name Sarek. T-S-E-R-I-C. Sarek. Sarek was just as abysmal as Ghostcrawler, if not worse. Sarek was the one that had both Arms and Fury nerfed a couple of times back in Classic, and he basically was trying to get warriors to be prot, and only prot. He was not happy because he couldn't find groups. He even mentioned this openly on the forums, that he was struggling to find groups on his server because warriors would not tank. So he made it so that warriors would be less apt to tank by nerfing the 2 specs that weren't prot. He admitted so. He admitted as much. And man, there's an ethereal. And so when he did this, everybody was up in arms. People started playing other classes. Wow, that's a really nice one. I mean, it's probably better than what I'm wearing. The low end is lower, the top end is higher. It's got hit monster flea. It's not as fast. I like mine better. So what I said was, other people made limericks. Limericks talking about how Sarek wanted warriors to spec prot. Which, okay, haha, funny, right? I, on the forums one day, said not only did Ghostcrawler throw us under the bus, but he told Sarek to back up. Basically saying that him and Sarek were talking in cahoots the whole time, and that, you know, they were cavorting against warriors. I was banned for 3 days. Mind you, I had not received a single forum. I did not receive a warning. I did not receive a 1-day ban. I didn't receive anything of the sort. I was immediately jumped to a 3-day forum ban for, quote, impersonating a Blizzard employee. Three days later, I came back and I said, so I'm back from my forum ban. And somebody wanted to know what I got forum banned for. So mind you, my old post was deleted by Blizzard. They deleted it off the forums because they were upset with me. And so I posted it again. The exact thing I wrote before. And somebody's like, but you weren't impersonating a Blizzard employee. And I said, exactly. I said, I guess the truth hurts. And Ghostcrawler was still on the forums. And I was like, dude, you don't ever give anything to the Warriors. I said, you play a Frost Mage, and you're the worst community manager we've had. And that's saying something, considering Sarek was awful. And people were like, don't give the guy a hard time. He's doing his best. It's like, no, he's not. This guy claims he's the lead designer on the game and then doesn't do anything to help anybody along anywhere. And everybody's like, yeah, but Warriors still did the best PvE DPS. Yeah, but that's not the point. Like, the one change we wanted as Warriors, and we never got until much, much, much later, was we just wanted to be able to have some sort of mobility in arms, or not even in arms, in battle stance, that wasn't, or just some mobility well in combat, that wasn't intercept. Because 9 times out of 10, if you were playing a warrior and you had to intercept to get into combat, you just lost the fight. Because you didn't get to charge off, you just had lost. You were already on the back foot and there was no way you were winning. And of course everybody says, well, that's why you have to use potions, or this, or that, or the other thing. Okay, but why is it warriors have to, but no one else does? And they're like, well, that's the class balance. You see, you know, that's how the game works. It's rock, paper, scissors, and that's the class balance. You know. And I'm sitting there going, wait a minute. Other classes don't have to rely on potions and buffs from other classes to have an escape mechanism, but warriors do, and that's balanced. Didn't make any sense to me then, and it still doesn't now. But yet, that's the line they were trying to feed us. I said, no. No. Some people might buy that line of crap, but I don't. And so, like, I trolled very hard. I mean, I trolled very, very hard. So much so that, like I said, Ghostcrawler ended up stopped going to the forums. He stopped communicating with the forums. He stopped reading the forums at large. And they said, well, now we don't get anything anyway. And I said, well, that's an improvement because we were getting nerfs before. So not getting anything now, we're no longer getting kicked in the teeth. We're just not getting listened to. Don't know about anybody else, but that's marked improvement. And a lot of people didn't like me on the forums for that reason. Doesn't matter. I don't care. It's not a popularity contest. Never was. And then Ghostcrawler went and moved to Riot Games. And again, I'll come back around to the Guild Wars 2 in a minute. Ghostcrawler moved to Riot Games. Not being dissuaded, I put in there a picture of the Titanic before it sank. And I said, Riot Games before Ghostcrawler's arrival. And then I put a picture of the Titanic sinking, if not sunk. And I said, Riot Games after Ghostcrawler's arrival. And I was immediately met with people telling me that I shouldn't say such things because insert reason here, there, or whatever. And I was like, well, too bad, I'm gonna say it. Did anyway. And the really funny part is, I ended up being right. Funny as that is. Ghostcrawler, when he was at Riot Games actually started losing popularity. And they had to make other things. Once he left, their popularity increased. Coincidence? Maybe. And some people would say, well, I don't know, Riot Games was really good. No, they had Teamfight Tactics, which wasn't exactly his doing because it was already in the making before he got there. And they didn't make... He'll come to me in a second. Valorant. They didn't make Valorant until after he left. So he had nothing to do with anything. And League of Legends ended up not being so good at the time. Nevertheless, he no longer works there. He works for his own company now. And he was on Twitter the other day, and he's like, I'm making my own MMO, blah, 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 blah. You know, I would love constructive criticism. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, would you, though? I even offered. I said, sure, yeah, you know, if I can get into the beta, I'll give constructive criticism. He doesn't know who I am, because times have changed. My name on Twitter and my name on here is vastly different from my name back in the Battle.net forum era days. And if he hears about this and is just like, yeah, you were the guy that did it. Yep. Guess what? I was right, and I'll do it again. And people say, well, why would you do it again? Because if I'm talking from the point of view of a player that's playing the game, right? So I'm playing the game, and I'm giving you feedback on what the problem is. Saying, this is a massive problem. No other class has this problem. What's the flight plan, so to speak? How do we fix this? How do we change it, right? And I'm told, it's fine, it's perfectly fine, don't worry about it, go back to your Sky Mall. Effectively being ignored by everybody. then why ask for input? You know? It's like asking somebody for their opinion, and then when they're like, "Well, I think," and then you're just like, Let me just stop you there." Well, I'm sorry. That's not it. You're asking for my opinion and then telling me, "No, I don't want your opinion." Then why'd you ask? Right? People can't seem to get that through their head. It's like, if you're going to ask for people's opinion, you want people to give feedback on things, constructive or otherwise. Like, I don't know about anybody else, but if you tell somebody a glaring issue in the game and they don't take that as constructive criticism and they say, "Well, you're just being mean," that's constructive criticism. I'm telling you, I'm pointing out an error in the game and wanting to help you fix it. I'm pointing out something that is deeply flawed, and yet you're just sitting there saying, with fingers in your ears, saying blah blah blah, "I can't hear you." One of us is actually giving criticism, and the other one's not listening. But back to the Guild Wars 2. Upon playing it, what I found is that the game is fun, but you level way too fast, right? I played about 6 hours yesterday. About 6.5 hours yesterday. That's not too much. Admittedly, there are games like Arcade where I sat there for like a 14-hour stint. Don't ever want to do that again, but I sat there for like a 14-hour stint when Arcade first came out, and boy, I went completely bananas on that game. I loved it. I played 6 hours, roughly, of Guild Wars 2. And in that 6 hours, I know nothing of the lore. I know nothing of the game's storyline. And I have a level 11 Thief and a level 28 Necromancer. I'm sorry, I've just put up 38 levels in 6 hours. This is not what I call a game that, like, I'm sorry, that sense of progression is just way off. Like, I think the level cap in the game is 80. I don't know about anybody else, but if I can make level cap inside of 24 hours, that game pacing is too fast. Way too fast. Obviously, I haven't done any professions or anything, but what I'm saying is if I can get to the character level cap in that time, there's a problem. There's a big problem. I'm going to also say this. The description for the thief does not match what the thief actually is. They talk about the thief, running around in the shadows and skulking and not being seen. And stealth isn't actually a basic part of the kit. Unlike in other classes, where stealth is an absolute basic part of the kit. Like, for example, Ashes of Creation. You play a rogue, stealth is right there in the forefront, like a level 4 ability. It's right there, right up front. It's clear as crystal. It's not like they're trying to hide it. But I understand why, as weird as this sounds, I understand why they don't want to make a game with a stealth component like that. And it makes perfect sense. I'm waiting to get the next waypoint here. The reason why they don't want to make a game with a stealth component like that is because when you add a stealth component, similar to World of Warcraft, similar to things in that vein, it gives an unfair advantage to the players playing it, and it gives an advantage to the players, or it gives an unfair advantage to the players playing against it. It gives an unfair advantage to the players playing it as well. So it puts a disadvantage to the opponent, and it puts an advantage to the player. Well, let me just kind of go out on a limb and say this right now. There's a way to offset this. If you want a character to be sneaking around and being, Stabby McKidney remover, there's two things you have to do. First off, your character is sneaking around and using daggers as the only weapon, and they don't get access to other weapons like swords, maces, or anything like that. If they're relegated to only daggers and poignards and short weapons like that, their damage has to be astronomically high with those daggers. The dagger damage itself can either be, you can either make the damage of the dagger very high, and then the abilities have a scaled back attack damage so that it balances out, and then make the combat more fluid between them and the opponent, or you make it completely front-loaded damage. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about with front-loaded damage, play a Subtlety Rogue in Burning Crusade, or any form of Subtlety Rogue in, like, Wrath of the Lich King. I know both Blizzard products, but that's my only reference point for this. And the reason why it's my only reference point for it is because it's the only thing I've played that all of the damage was loaded on the front end. I played an Orc Rogue back in Burning Crusade originally. And when I played him, I had a combo that I did that would absolutely drop most players straight away. I was a level 61, and if you were anywhere near my level, wearing anything less than plate, you were dead in 2 hits. Because I would go Premeditation, Blood Fury, Shadow Step, Ambush, Eviscerate. That combo gave extra attack power because I'm an Orc, and allowed me to front load all the damage on my ambush through the subtlety tree, gave me maximized combo points through the ambush into the eviscerate, basically guaranteeing me to drop the opponent in a very short amount of time. That's front-loaded damage. Like, I would do 2/3, if not 3/4 of your life total, and in some cases, all of your life total with the ambush. It would be ambush, and your life total is now this much, and then I just eviscerate for it doesn't matter because you're already dead. It's literally Fist of the North Star, Omae wa mou shinderu. You are already dead. Omae wa mou shinderu. Bang. Because you were when I did that. It's just how it was. But that's how you balance those types of classes. And I did make it to the waypoint. But that's how you balance those type of classes. If you want something skulking around and using the shadows and hiding and then ambushing people and then slinking back to the shadows, you have to make them very frail. Like 2-3 hits, they're dead. Because that's exactly what it becomes. It becomes you have to anticipate when you're going to get jumped by something like that and then say, okay, here's a defensive cooldown. I now 2-shot the opponent instead of the opponent 2-shotting me. That's how you balance that type of class. You front load it all with damage and poisons and debuffs, and then everything just goes into the opponent, and then they have to somehow escape without being slaughtered, meaning the rogue itself. You don't give them the ability to stand there and fight. And they say, well, then how are they going to do PvE? Simple. You make it so that the PvE monsters do less damage to the rogue. That way, they can stand there and fight versus environmental monsters. But in PvP, they get blown up. They either blow up or they get blown up. That's how you fix it. Plain and simple. But I hope you enjoyed this video and my discussion. And I hope everybody has a fantastic evening, a wonderful tomorrow, and as always, have a good one.